Hello, greetings. This is Erick Widman from Passage Immigration Law. And this week we're doing yet another live Q&A session, and we're so glad you've joined us. We have some great questions as usual, and several of them relate to passports and naturalization, and that's always one of our favorite topics. So we'll kick things off right away. And the first question is, what form do I need to get a passport if I don't have an N600? And the N600 refers to the Certificate of Citizenship. So if you're already a US citizen and you need to prove it by securing a passport or a certificate of citizenship, you can proceed, to answer your question, with getting a passport with form DS-11. And that stands for Department of State 11. And in the world of immigration forms that people like me live in, that form is not as difficult as some of the others, such as the N600 itself. And that is because it's not as permanent. Your passport expires. And so the N600 is a permanent certificate of citizenship, but your passport has to be renewed. Of course, your passport is very important, and that's why you want to get one. And it really is good to have both. If you've naturalized or if there's any uncertainty because you were born outside the United States, you will want to file an N600, get a certificate of citizenship. So on to the next question. Hello, sir. Thank you. My wife and I got citizenship through naturalization. Also, I applied for a passport for my daughter. She's 11 years old now, with proof of our naturalization certificate, and we got it. Now I'm trying to apply for the N600 form to get the naturalization certificate for her, but in the eligibility criteria online on that form, the N600, it says, if you've previously filed a passport application on behalf of the child, note that the child is not eligible for issuance of a certificate of citizenship under INA section 322 if he or she has a valid unexpired US passport. And his question, or her question, is, can I still continue to file the N600 or not? So definitely a great question. This online form often is not so sophisticated. All the nuances are not there. So you're asked questions that might not be applicable to you. And so your daughter, who's 11 years old, you're trying to get a certificate of citizenship for her. There's two different types of forms to get her certificate of citizenship. The N600K form applies to that section of the INA that you referenced, INA section 322. And that is when when your child is mainly living outside the United States, when her residence is outside the United States, USCIS makes you go through a different procedure and a different form. And thankfully, there is the option that you don't have to have your child residing here as a permanent resident in the US like you do under INA 320, where the Child Citizenship Act applies. So for you, because you're in the US, as I understand it, your daughter is here, she's not residing outside the United States, therefore, you don't have to worry about this question and whether you've previously filed a passport under INA 322 and received one. You have not, because you're filing this through the regular N600, not the N600K, and that applies to you under INA 320. So you don't have to worry about this question and you can simply answer no. Let me double check here. You're supposed to say no. So you're good there. That's great. And you're able to not answer that question, and you can proceed with the N600. All right. Next question is, I'm a US citizen and I have been for decades. My child was born abroad. We're back in the US now for my job, and my child is here, but also on a tourist visa. So how can I apply for my daughter's citizenship here? I was told she's entitled to a passport right away. However, no one can tell me what forms to apply for and where and how to submit them. Additionally, what documents and ID do I have to submit? If you know, please do tell me. Okay, so let's confirm which form, in fact, you need to apply for. You mentioned you're a US citizen. You've been one for decades. You've been here in the United States for a long time, but your child was born abroad. Your child is here, but she's on a tourist visa. So she has a residence outside the United States. Your child has, similar to the prior question, residence outside the US, and therefore the N600K process is what you need to do. That's the way to proceed, rather than the N600, which applies to people who are already here and are residents in the US. So you will want to double check that you meet all the criteria for the N600K certificate of citizenship. But based upon what you've described here, that would be the correct one. The USCIS website is the best resource, even better than lawyer articles, for what's required. So N600K, as K is in Kappa or kangaroo, and if you put that into Google, USCIS N600K, you get guidance on that right away. And so the required information and forms that you need, including the option to file it online, it's all right there. The instructions are definitely worth reading. You'll want to read that with the PDF, and the required documents are also listed there. So I'll hit upon the main ones real fast here. Checklist of required evidence for the N600K, 2 passport style photographs, your child's birth certificate, the US citizen's birth certificate, proof of the required physical presence in the US for the US citizen or grandparents in some circumstances. Then you have proof of the US citizenship for your qualifying parent or grandparent. And sometimes other documents are required, such as if there was a divorce, the US citizen terminated the prior marriage, the US citizen parent's marriage certificate, evidence of legal guardianship. Sometimes those documents apply, sometimes they're required. But the hard part is knowing where to start. And so I think we've given you a good starting point with the N600K, as in kangaroo. Okay, here's a good question, and I can relate personally to this in many ways. I'm a dual citizen and have lost my US passport. I plan to get a new one in the US Embassy in Nicaragua. And so my question is, if I have an emergency and if I have to leave the US, can I fly out with just my foreign passport, your Nicaraguan passport, without needing the US passport? So yes, I've lost my own US passport in Hungary when I was visiting there with my wife. And I had to go into the US Embassy. And actually, it's a good story because I was pickpocketed on a bus traveling from the 41 tram over into downtown Budapest. I was feeling a little too complacent and cocky that couldn't happen to me. It never happened before, but I got pickpocketed. So I needed to replace my passport. I'm not a dual citizen of another country. And so the person asking the question is wondering, though, if in an emergency, if I didn't have time to get my US passport reissued, could you return on your Nicaraguan passport? So I researched this to double check, and the US State Department requires US citizens to only return with a valid US passport. So the temptation would be, like you said, well, can I go as a Nicaraguan? And it's just not allowed under US law to do that if you're a US citizen. So what US embassies have done is create a way to get an emergency limited temporary passport very quickly, basically the next business day. They don't have them available over the weekends typically, but if it's a life or death emergency, immediate need to get back to the US, they have a duty officer who's always on call, where you can call that person at the US Embassy and get a new passport issued right away. So it'll just be for a limited period of time, and it's a special temporary passport that'll get you into the US, and then you can apply for a regular one that'll be good for 10 years. So that's the procedure that the US government wants you to follow, requires you to follow. You cannot and should not rely upon your other dual nationality to enter the US with that. That will create all kinds of problems at the border. And in theory, it's never happened to one of our clients, but they technically would have a legal right to turn you around and not admit you. So that would be a big pain. So the best thing is to get that limited passport taken care of. I was able to take, when I lost my own passport, a week or two. I think they did it in about a week. This is about 15 years ago in Budapest. They were able to get that passport issued to me. And it was a regular new passport that was good for the next 10 years. So there you have it. Thanks so much for tuning in to the live Q&A. Let us know if you have other questions, and we'll answer them next week. Take care. Have a great week.